Hello, my relatives. I apologize for that. My browser froze and I was able to reload it without losing the stream. So I was a bit nervous there. But it is Friday, uh, February 4th, and I am sitting down to my second cup of coffee. And I want to talk today about decolonizing philanthropy. So before I begin, though, let me do as I always do, which is acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from what's now known as Washington, D.C., but that these are the traditional lands of the Piscataway. I want to honor the Piscataway as the host people of these lands. And I want to thank them for their stewardship of them and just state how humbled I am to be living here today. So, my Piscataway relatives, I am very humbled to be here. The other day, I was reading I was reading some, just kind of browsing some news, and I came across a quote that really caught my eye, and I want to share it here. I'm going to put it into the chat, into the comment section. And it's there's several parts to the quote, but I'm going to put it in here and I'm going to share it on on the screen here. And the first part of the quote said, I recognize the absurdity of so much wealth being concentrated in the hands of one person, and I believe the only responsible thing to do with a fortune this size is to give it away as thoughtfully and impactfully as possible. The quote goes on to say, it's important to acknowledge, sorry, let me go back to there. It's important to acknowledge, how can I get it? Oh, I don't know if I can bring it again. The quote goes on to say, it's important to acknowledge that giving away money your family will never need is not an especially noble act. I read that and I'm like, that's an incredible understanding of charity or philanthropy, right? How often, as people from the margins, do we have to accept charity or accept philanthropy, and it comes with incredible oversight and dictation of what you can do and what you can't do, and reporting requirements and all these other things, and then acknowledging and honoring the people who gave it to you and holding them up and then naming a building after them and all the things that happens here. And here is this quote saying that giving away money that you will never need is not a noble act, right? And it almost sounds like they're saying this is expected. The quote that I just gave to you came from Melinda French Gates, who is the ex-wife of Bill Gates. And she has been giving away millions and millions of dollars, and has been doing it in a way that is getting noticed by so many people. And in fact, the quote came from, it was an article that was first published by the Wall Street Journal. And then it was kind of quoted and requoted by other news agencies such as Reuters and so on. I'm going to share the Wall Street Journal article with you here, and then I'll also put the Reuters article here, and you can just read them there. The Wall Street Journal article could be behind a paywall, and so you can also read about it in Reuters. But these articles, the Wall Street Journal, which was, I think, the original article that got quoted frequently, the title was Melinda French Gates no longer pledges the bulk of her wealth to the Gates Foundation, right? Which sounds like she's not going to be giving it away. It sounds like she's, this is she's had a change of heart, right? It again, this is meant to get clicks, not really report news. This is the Wall Street Journal, and so they highlight it that way. But if you actually read the article, it includes the quotes I just read you, and I actually found a link to the entire letter that was written by Melinda French. And she goes on to say, there's no question in my mind that the real standard for generosity is set by the people who give, even when it means going without. That's why, as part of this pledge, I commit to doing more than just writing checks. I also commit my time, energy, and efforts to the work of fighting poverty, advancing equality for women and girls and other marginalized people groups in the United States and around the world. She goes on to say, I've also learned how important it is to ensure that the people closest to those problems have a role in designing solutions. It's much easier to imagine that you have all the answers when you're sitting in a conference boardroom in Seattle than when you're face to face with a business owner in Nairobi or an indigenous activist in New Mexico who is telling you in her own words about her hopes for the future and the challenges she sees to realizing them. That's why I think philanthropy is most effective when it prioritizes flexibility over ideology. And she talks about how the way she gives is trusting the people who give it or who receive the gift and not burdening them with tremendous reporting and other things. And right, this is just completely contrary to the way, and we'll just be honest, white landowning men give, where they want their name on a building, they want to know how you're spending it, they want you to be accountable, they do all these checks, and they don't really trust the people they're giving their money to, and they want to make sure that they are properly credited for it. They have massive buildings that, where they give their money from, they spend all this money on overhead and, checking and all this stuff, and require their grantees or the people who get their money to invest a lot of their money in making sure that things get overhead oversight correctly. And here is Melinda French upending that and doing something entirely different. And then this reminded me of a story I heard a few months ago. And this was about MacKenzie Scott, who, again, she is the ex-wife of Jeff Bezos. And there was an article in the New York Times. I'm going to share some quotes by MacKenzie Scott from a post that she wrote on Medium. And this was last summer, I believe. And then there was a New York Times article that talked about, the title was Giving Billions Fast, MacKenzie Scott Upends Philanthropy. And it talks about kind of what Melinda Scott is doing. And some of the quotes from MacKenzie Scott. And MacKenzie Scott, I believe in 2021, gave away about $6 billion. The New York Times actually reported it's thought to be the largest amount of money given away by a living person in a single year. And in her Medium post, MacKenzie Scott wrote, the result over the last 4 months has been $4.1 billion in gifts to 384 organizations across all 50 states, Puerto Rico, and Washington, D.C. She says and she talks about how her and her advisors kind of analyze the groups that they're giving money to. And she says, we'll never eliminate every risk through our analysis, but we'll eliminate many. Then we can select organizations to assist and get out of the way. Not only are nonprofits chronically underfunded, but they are chronically diverted from their work by fundraising and by burdensome reporting requirements that donors often place on them. She said, we do this research and deeper diligence not only to identify organizations with high potential for impact, but also to pave the way for unsolicited and unexpected gifts given with the full trust and no strings attached. Right? This is beautiful that here these two women, now among some of the wealthiest people in the world, giving away billions in a way that isn't designed to get them praise or honor or their name plastered on everything that they touch, which is what most men want, but actually allows the people who they're giving the money to have the most control over how the money's spent and given with a level of trust that they can spend the money that's been given to them. And then going back to the quotes from Melinda French, and her first two quotes, I recognize the absurdity of so much wealth being concentrated in the hands of one person, and I believe the only responsible thing to do with a fortune this size is to give it away. It's important to acknowledge that giving away money your family will never need is not an especially noble act. She's like, don't honor me for this. I'm not doing anything noble here. I'm giving away money that no reasonable amount, no one, this money should never be concentrated in the hands of one person. And I will never be able to spend all this money. So don't think I'm doing something noble. And she goes on to talk about how this is actually her debt to society. I love how these two women are decolonizing the way we see philanthropy being given and the way we see even charity being given. It's a much needed message, and I'm deeply, deeply grateful for that. And I'm excited to see that. But anyway, I wanted to share some of that today because this is a pretty interesting thing that they're doing. Um, and yeah, I just wanted to highlight this on my on my on this live stream over my second cup of coffee, because so often I talk about things that are going so wrong, and I wanted to talk about how this is actually some really beautiful stuff that is happening here, and it's exciting to see this decolonizing begin to take place. And hopefully they will be an example. Not only is there the example of the Giving Pledge, which is about billionaires committing to give their money away before they die, but now these women are upending even how that money is given away. And I think this could be a very positive way to decolonizing philanthropy and actually empowering people instead of controlling them, which is, if we're honest, is what a lot of our philanthropy is really about. The other thing I want, good morning, Cheryl Ann. Thanks for joining this morning. Good to have you here from the land of the Clackamas and the Cowlitz and the Chinook, now known as Portland, Oregon. Thanks for joining this morning. I also want to talk to you. I made a few changes to my Patreon site this morning, and I wanted to just highlight some of those a minute. I added 2 new tiers. We have 4 tiers now. The first tier gives you, basically, it's a $5 subscription tier, and at that level, you get posts on my Patreon of ad-free versions of my Second Cups of Coffee and most of my videos I put up on YouTube, as well as an audio file that you can listen to of my Second Cups of Coffee, and other videos on YouTube are put up on Patreon. That's for the $5 level. The $10 level gives you access to those downloads, as well as it gives you access to 2 Q&As. The third and fourth week of each month, I'm trying to do 2 Q&As, one with myself, where people can ask questions about stuff I've been talking about, or lectures I've given, or the book I've written, and one with a guest. So last month we had myself and Sungchan Ra, and we did Q&A with people on Patreon about that. The next level I just added this morning, I called it deepening the dialogue, I think, or joining the conversation, I think is what I called it. And right, I've been lecturing and speaking and giving presentations around the country, the continent, and even the globe for the past decade, 10 to 15 years. And I talk on themes of the doctrine of discovery, truth and conciliation, power and authority, contextualizing worship, Christian nationalism, right? All the themes that I talk on very frequently. And I always try to adjust my talks each time based on the context of what's going on in the modern day, as well as the audience I'm speaking to, and how can I frame this best for the audience that's in front of me. And so as a result, I'm constantly updating my talks and reframing them and kind of combining them and putting different focuses and emphasis on them. And so what I'm going to be doing once a month is I'm going to be giving a Patreon specific talk. And it will be a full lecture, 45 minutes to an hour in length. Or actually, it's a half an hour to 45 minutes up to an hour in length. And it will be with my latest examples, my latest content, my latest, kind of research that I've been doing. And we'll put that up on Patreon, and then we'll follow that with a Q&A. And so for this level, which I'm calling joining the conversation, it's at a $20 subscription level, and once a month you will get a lecture like that. And this month We're going to be doing it the third week of the month on my Patreon, and it will be around the theme of Christian nationalism. And so I'll be promoting this for the next 2 weeks. If you want to be a part of that lecture, you can join my Patreon at the level called Joining the Conversation. It's the $20 level. Then the fourth level we added this morning is after my live stream with Sungchan last week, he and I had a conversation about ways we're trying to keep promoting the book. And I told him, and he knows what I've been doing on Patreon. And so we decided to do a Patreon specific virtual book study. And so once a month, we will go through a chapter of our book. Both Sungchan and myself will be on the live stream. We'll teach and have some in-depth dialogue for about 30 to 40 minutes. And then we'll have about 15 to 20 minutes of Q&A at the end of that live stream, where we take questions from people. And that we'll start this month with chapter 1, and it will run for the next 12 months. And to join that, you can join our Patreon, and that level is at $35 a month. And so again, with Patreon, the way it works is you subscribe, and then you get all of the levels that came before that. So you'll also get access to the monthly lecture, as well as the other Q&As and the live streams that we're putting up there. So this is just ways that people can kind of support and that we can continue to move the conversation forward. So I hope you're able, if you're interested in supporting my work and helping me, not only will you join me on Patreon, but I'm using Patreon to really empower and give resources for what I'm doing on my broader social media. And so this content isn't going to remain only on Patreon, but this is really so I can sharpen my talking points and hone my answers to questions, so that I can do a more effective job when I am speaking at a live event, or when I am doing something online for my broader social media audience. So it's just a way for people to kind of jump in and partner with that. So anyway, those are the things that I'm doing on Patreon. And if you want to look at that, I'll put the link into the comment section here, and you can join in on that. I see Steve has joined us. Steve, thanks for joining today. It's good to have you here. But anyway, so this is what I wanted to talk about today. Nothing too in depth, but I just wanted to highlight some of the ways that I'm excited to see MacKenzie Scott and Melinda French begin the process of decolonizing philanthropy. And I wanted to share some of the stuff we're doing on Patreon that will be in effect this month, in the month of February. So let me look through the comments, see if I've missed anything else. Adam is on here. Hey, Adam, it's good to see you here. Thanks for joining today. Phil, Phil, thanks for joining from the lands of the Anishinaabe and the Potawatomi. I know you're in Michigan, so thanks for joining. Leaf Burns, hey, Leaf, thanks for joining from Arizona. I miss Arizona. It's good to have you here, so I want to thank everybody for joining on today. But I hope you are enjoying your second cup of coffee. I hope I've given you a few things to think about and a few resources to look at. And I hope you have a great weekend. So walk in beauty, my relatives. And may we learn how to walk in beauty together. Shahat and Hakonet.